Blueprints for Belonging. Dropped from her lifestyle magazine after a very public breakup with her cheating ex, celebrity baker Maya Kwan wants nothing more than to restore her grandparents' old bakery in her childhood hometown and find some peace. After 20 years of neglect, though, the building is falling apart and in desperate need of a renovation. Enter Quinn Hart, a tough, no-nonsense contractor with a reputation for getting the job done, even if it means working odd hours and dealing with stubborn clients. When a spring storm causes severe damage to Maya's already struggling project, Quinn offers her an alternative plan. But will Maya be willing to accept the price? The first meeting between Maya and Quinn nearly ends before it begins. The roar of an old, green pickup filled the quiet parking lot, scattering gravel across the asphalt. Maya, who had just been ready to cancel her appointment with the contractor, ended her call and shoved her phone back into her purse. A thin layer of dust settled on her polished black loafers. With a small sigh, she straightened her blouse and crossed her arms, watching as the truck door swung open. "Sorry I'm late." A tall woman in worn jeans and well-used work boots rounded the truck. Her thick, sun-streaked brown hair was tied back, and she held a clipboard in one hand, her other hand tucked into the back pocket of her jeans. Maya raised an eyebrow, not reaching for the outstretched hand. "And you are?" "Quinn Hart," she replied, letting her hand drop as a flicker of annoyance crossed her face. "I was supposed to meet with the Maya Kwan for a building estimate." Maya didn't hide her skepticism. "You're late," she pointed out, her tone sharp. Quinn met her gaze, her eyes cool and steady. "Yeah, I know," she said, glancing up at the early morning sky. "But I thought I apologized for that." Maya studied her, taking in Quinn's broad shoulders, rolled-up sleeves revealing strong forearms, and a tool belt that looked as worn-in as her jeans. Quinn was clearly unimpressed by Maya's impatience, and something about her unshakable calm got under Maya's skin. "You don't look like most contractors," Maya said finally, her voice still edged with irritation. Quinn didn't flinch. Instead, she smirked. "You don't look like most clients. Guess we're both full of surprises." "Huh." She shrugged, then nodded toward the bakery building. "Want me to take a look at what you need done, or are we just going to stand here judging each other?" Maya felt her cheeks warm slightly but kept her composure. Yes. I want you to look at the building. It needs extensive work, and I was hoping to open it by fall. But after this storm damage, I'm not even sure it's worth the effort." Quinn's expression softened a little. "Let's see what we're dealing with. I'm not going to sugarcoat things, but I'll tell you exactly what's possible." She motioned toward the door. "Lead the way." As they entered the bakery, the smell of dust and old wood filled the air, mingling with the faint memory of cinnamon and sugar from long ago. Maya's heart tightened. The place had been her safe haven as a child. She brushed her fingers over the worn counter, imagining it bustling with customers again. Quinn took in the scene with a professional eye, noting the sagging ceiling beams and cracked floor tiles. She pulled out her notepad, jotting down measurements and murmuring to herself as she moved through the space. "You really want to bring this place back to life?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder at Maya, who nodded firmly. "Yes," Maya replied, a determined glint in her eye. "This place means a lot to me. And to this town, if I can get it right." Quinn nodded, her gaze turning thoughtful. "Then we'll make it happen." She paused, her voice softening. "I know what it's like to want a fresh start." Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the tension between them melted away. Maya saw something vulnerable in Quinn's steady gaze, something that hinted at her own reasons for being here. She smiled, just a little. "Thank you, Quinn," Maya said. "I appreciate you giving me a chance." Quinn returned the smile, tucking her pen behind her ear. "Just doing my job, Ms. Kwan. Now, let's get down to business." As they mapped out the details of the project, Maya felt a renewed sense of hope. Maybe, with Quinn's help, she could not only restore her grandparents' bakery but find a place for herself in this town again. And maybe, just maybe, the two of them would find more than they expected along the way. Over the next few weeks, Maya and Quinn developed a steady rhythm. Quinn would arrive each morning with her toolbox and blueprints, sometimes bringing along her small crew to tackle the bigger jobs. Maya was there too, in old jeans and a paint-splattered t-shirt, eager to help wherever she could, even if she occasionally got in the way more than she helped. They exchanged little moments in between the noise and bustle, catching each other's eye over shared coffee breaks and joking about the quirks of small-town life. Slowly, they each let their guards down. Maya talked about her former life in the city and the scandal that had nearly ruined her career, while Quinn shared stories of growing up in the area and the struggles of being a single mom to a now-grown son. One particularly hot day, Maya was tackling the paint-splattered walls in the dining area when Quinn wandered over, wiping her brow with a rag. "You're really getting into this renovation thing," Quinn said, smiling as she watched Maya roll a fresh coat of paint over the walls. Maya laughed, stepping back to look at her handiwork. "Turns out it's actually pretty therapeutic. Who knew wielding a paint roller could be so satisfying?" Quinn chuckled, grabbing a paintbrush and joining in. "It's amazing what a little paint can do. This place is already starting to feel alive again." They worked side by side, chatting about the plans for the decor and reminiscing about old bakeries and cafes they'd both visited over the years. Quinn's attention to detail surprised Maya. She had assumed the contractor was all about heavy lifting and construction, but Quinn's eye for design was just as sharp. Just as Maya was beginning to feel a deeper connection, a rainstorm swept through the town one evening, leaving behind more than just puddles. The following morning, as Quinn unlocked the bakery, she found water seeping through the ceiling and pooling on the floor. "Damn it," she muttered under her breath, grabbing a bucket and moving quickly to contain the water. When Maya arrived a few minutes later, her heart sank at the sight of Quinn standing in a puddle with a grim expression. "This is going to set us back, isn't it?" Maya asked, anxiety clear in her voice. Quinn sighed, rubbing her temple. "Yeah, it's not good. The roof damage is worse than I thought, and some of the old beams are rotting from years of neglect. This will mean more time, and it'll probably be more expensive." Maya slumped onto a nearby stool, her hands covering her face. "I don't know if I can afford much more. I've already put everything I have into this place." Quinn put a hand on Maya's shoulder, squeezing gently. "Hey, we'll figure something out. Let's get a second opinion on the roof and see if there's a cheaper way to repair it. I don't want you to give up on this." Maya looked up at her, a mixture of hope and doubt in her eyes. "Why are you being so kind to me, Quinn? I know this must be a headache for you too." Quinn shrugged, giving her a small smile. "I know what it's like to need a second chance. And sometimes, we all need someone in our corner." In that moment, the room seemed to go quiet, the rain pattering softly outside. Maya looked at Quinn, realizing how much she had come to rely on her calm, steady presence. She felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself in a long time. But she pushed it down, reminding herself that they were here to work, nothing more. The next week brought even more challenges, from unexpected expenses to delays with supplies. But Maya and Quinn continued to push through, their bond growing with each day spent side by side in the dusty, half-renovated bakery. Finally, the day came when they were ready for a soft opening. They'd only completed half of the renovations, but Maya decided to open the doors early, hoping to bring in some revenue while they finished the rest. Locals trickled in, curious about the new bakery and eager to try Maya's recipes. With Quinn's help, they had turned the front room into a cozy space with small tables, warm lighting, and shelves lined with fresh-baked bread and pastries. Maya's heart swelled as she watched customers savor the treats she'd worked so hard to perfect. In a rare quiet moment, Quinn came up beside her, sipping a cup of coffee and admiring the view. "You did it," she said, her voice soft. "The place looks amazing, Meyer." Meyer looked at her, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, Quinn." "I mean that." Quinn's gaze held hers, and for a moment, neither of them looked away. "Well," Quinn said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm glad I was here to help." Meyer reached out, taking Quinn's hand in hers. "Stay," she murmured. "I want you to be here, beyond the renovation." Quinn's expression softened, a flicker of vulnerability crossing her face. She squeezed Meyer's hand gently, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I think I'd like that," she said. And as the last rays of sunlight filtered through the bakery windows, casting a warm glow over the room, Meyer felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of belonging, and maybe even the start of something more. The grand opening came 2 weeks later. After the successful soft launch, Meyer poured her remaining energy into the final details, filling the display cases with her best recipes and making sure every corner of the bakery exuded warmth. Quinn helped with the last-minute touch-ups, fixing a few shelves, double-checking the plumbing, and even hanging a wooden sign over the door that read "The Heart of Home." Meyer stood back on opening day, admiring the space as sunlight streamed through the windows. She looked around for Quinn, who had been putting up the outdoor seating, and found her at the front door, wiping her hands on her work jeans as she inspected her work with a satisfied smile. "Quinn," Meyer called, gesturing her over, "come look at this." Quinn wandered in, her eyes widening as she took in the fresh pastries, the subtle scent of vanilla and cinnamon wafting through the air, and the small details that Meyer had poured her heart into. "This place is beautiful, Meyer," Quinn said, her voice tinged with admiration. "You really brought it to life." Meyer felt a warmth rise in her chest, both from the compliment and from the way Quinn looked at her. "Thank you. I mean it. You've been here every step of the way, even when things got messy. I don't know how I can ever repay you." Quinn waved her off. "You don't have to. Besides, I got paid in enough coffee and pastries to last me a year." She chuckled, then looked at Meyer with a serious expression. "Honestly, I'm just happy to see this place open. You deserve this." Before Meyer could respond, the bell above the door jingled, signaling the arrival of their first customer. It was a little girl holding her mother's hand, her eyes wide as she took in the assortment of colorful pastries. Meyer's heart swelled as she greeted them, helping the little girl choose a strawberry tart. Soon, the bakery was filled with people, locals, curious passers-by, even a few familiar faces from her old life who had come to support her. She was surrounded by laughter, the clinking of coffee cups, and the quiet hum of conversation. Throughout the morning, Quinn stayed nearby, helping where she could and sneaking a bite of a chocolate croissant in between assisting customers. Every now and then, their eyes would meet, and a comfortable silence would pass between them. As the crowd began to thin, Meyer finally found a moment to sit down. She let out a long sigh, feeling both exhausted and fulfilled. Quinn sat across from her, a look of pride in her eyes. "So how does it feel to have made your dream a reality?" Meyer thought for a moment, looking around at the space they had brought to life together. "It feels like I'm finally home." She reached across the table, her hand brushing against Quinn's. "And having you here makes it even better." Quinn's hand turned, and she laced her fingers with Meyer's. "Meyer, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." Meyer's heart skipped a beat. She held Quinn's gaze, noticing the glint of vulnerability in her eyes. Quinn took a deep breath. "Would you maybe like to go out sometime? Outside the bakery, outside of work, just us." Meyer's face broke into a smile, her fingers tightening around Quinn's. "I'd love that." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, fingers intertwined. For the first time in a long time, Meyer felt a sense of peace. She had come back to this small town, broken and lost, but she'd found so much more than a second chance. She'd found friendship, community, and the beginnings of something she hadn't expected, love. And as they sat together in the bakery that was now filled with the scent of freshly baked bread and quiet contentment, Maya realized that sometimes, life's unexpected detours lead you right where you're meant to be.